California WaterFix, previously called the Bay Delta Conservation Plan, is a plan to build two tunnels underneath the delta. These tunnels will, in theory, allow for a more stable delivery of water to Southern California and the Central Valley and reduce ecological impacts in the delta. However, the project is controversial for people living in the delta who have nothing to gain and a lot to lose from the tunnels.
So a lot of the development in California based on taking out water from the north, moving it to the south. At the same time, there have been a lot of damages. One damage, for example, is the fact that water was taken for Orange Valley to build the foundation to Los Angeles. All the big pumps that move water through the delta have been a source of problems. So in the past, people wanted to move water even from far away in the north to the valley. People wanted to build dam in Yosemite. If you read Cadillac Desert, you realize how many crazy proposals were there. Now the big issues are first preserving the data, and because people are worried with climate change, etc. And second, preserving endangered species.
The delta that we have today is a very altered system. I mean, certainly over the last 150 years or so, there's been an enormous change there in terms of channelizing, building levees, agricultural development that's happened there, and also towns and communities. So what you have there today is a very unique place, but it's very altered from what it might have been 150 to 200 years ago.
Green and Hemley was started in 1850 by the Green brothers, who came east in search of probably not fame, but definitely fortune. Family lore has it that when they were going on steamboat up to Sacramento, the steamboat operator at some point slowed down and said, boys, as far as I can figure, your land is right underneath us. Because, the levees hadn't been built up yet. Started the pear packing house in the 1970s after the first one had been started in the 1870s. And we have been here ever since.
So this project's really about shoring that up by moving the diversion point, which is essentially the heart of the project. We're addressing that conflict with the species and the way you operate it, and then also protecting against the climate change and sea level rise impacts and some of the vulnerabilities. So it's essentially a water supply reliability benefit that agencies would get.
The Bay Delta Conservation Plan, when it was first proposed, there were multiple alternatives, and the preferred alternative that has now been renamed the WaterFix for purely political and lack of mitigation reasons, hits us as Green and Hemley as a business and as a family probably more directly than it hits anyone else. There are 3 spots where they say they want to take water out of the Sacramento River. The most northern spot takes out an orchard that is owned by family friends, and we have managed that orchard for decades. Middle outtake takes out an apple orchard that is owned by our neighbors, and we pack their fruit. The most southern pumping station, before it got moved just a smidge to the north, and it took out my parents' house, the house that was built by my grandmother's grandfather. So it's hard not to take it personally.
This current project has probably been studied over the last 10 years. There has been a lot of engagement with folks in the Delta and a lot of changes made to the project in response to feedback from them. So if you were to trace it over time, and you probably have, you could see that there have been a lot of changes made to the footprint of the project, the capacity of it, and many modifications over the years in response to the feedback and the concerns of the community there.
It won't fix anything. As far as, everybody always talks about the Delta being broken. What they're really referring to is they can't pump the water when they want to because of environmental concerns. They're not talking about adding any fish screens to the southern pumps that they say they will never abandon. So if the problem is that you're sucking fish in through the southern pumps, screen them. If the levees collapse and things aren't fixed and there need to be repairs, we've been going over this for over a decade and they have yet to make the repairs they've been talking about. If it's that bad and you say you're still going to need it, then you take care of your asset. Infrastructure maintenance is imperative. Any business owner can tell you that.
The Delta Independent Science Board reviews the quality of the science for making management and policy decisions. And the review started as a review of the science of water quality management. But as they reviewed the science of water quality management, they discovered that the link to management just wasn't there. And that's because the management of the water quality had to be all upstream of the Delta. Even the legislation doesn't make it clear that you can't understand the Delta without going upstream.
Who will pay for Gary Brown Dream Canal? No one knows. And that's the agreement. So you'll have, so as I understand now, Westland Water District don't want to pay for it, and if they don't want to pay for it, you'll have only one pipeline. If they want to pay to it, there will be two pipelines. So my feeling is that you could do the same stuff, maybe cheaper, but they want it to be as sophisticated as can be.
So the whole thing has been brought to the state of California as we need 2 tunnels now, and here's the analysis that shows that, rather than thinking it through in a kind of a whole package of what's the optimal timing. I mean, someday, yes, if we continue to export water from Northern California to Southern California, the sea will rise. And if we export water from north to south, something will be needed to get it around the Delta. But there's still that question, will we be exporting water from north to south? Southern agricultural interests are buying land in Northern California. They're buying land in Oregon. Agriculture may get too hot in the south as climate change occurs. So again, is that big long-term picture rather than, boom, we need 2 tunnels. Let's analyze that.
Regions now. Over time, so this is one element. Then we have the state water project and the federal water city, the Central Valley project that took huge amount of water from the north and moved it to the south, and it has been used for agriculture. Again, California agriculture basically is the main provider of fruits and vegetables to the nation. So if tomorrow you wouldn't have California agriculture, a lot of the food that people consider healthy for you wouldn't be there. In the future, I think that there will be a desalinization. So if you ask me what the future that I see, a lot of desalinization that will basically provide water to the south and the area near the coast. And you will be able to desalinate using solar energy, so you have less greenhouse gases. Actually, more water that maybe one day would allow us to destroy the Acacia and preserve some water in the middle of the state, and more mechanism to reuse water.
Within the Delta, alternatives could have been given a little further consideration. And again, it's it's the question of what's the appropriate timing given the economics of given this bigger picture. Eventually, with sea level rise, if water is to be exported, something has to be done. But sort of the optimal plan through that process, I don't think was ever actually worked out.
From an engineering standpoint, it's totally cool. It is just about the sexiest engineering project you could come up with. It is new, it is big, it is exciting, it's never been done before, and it's an expensive waste of time because won't deliver any more water?
Well, it's a very unique ecosystem. It's one of the most important estuaries on the West Coast, and indeed in North America. I mean, it's home to untold, aquatic species as well as birds. It's just a tremendous resource. But as we said at the beginning, it's tremendously altered since humans have been here and developed it. So, it's unique. It's a treasure. It's the kind of heart of our water system and our ecological function there. So there's a tremendous obligation to address it and to make sure that we're doing what we can today to keep it sustainable and address these problems. So into the future, when we look out 50 years, we can say, okay, we took the action we needed to halt further decline and keep the water supplies reliable.
The Delta is home, and I don't know of any other place that's like here. Yes, it is a little bit man-made because the levee banks have been raised and reinforced and all of that, but it's not completely man-made. The river was here before we were here, and it will be here after we're gone, and that is just the way it is. But there is no other place in the world that has the water, that has the trees, that has the birds, that has all of this stuff that lives here. And it's kind of amazing that I've been able to experience it.
What do people care about the Delta? The Delta is unique, the Delta is important, but the Delta, to some extent, the infrastructure of the Delta, the island, they are almost accident of history. The island, people build the island, they start planting pears and apples, they develop a few communities. The area itself is important. You can say it's unique habitat. Yes, it's not like the Delta, the Mekong Delta. And at the end, it will be preserved. So to some extent, it's a very vulnerable area that if it's mismanaged, it lead to a disaster. It lead to people, the cities that will be swamped. But altogether, if you look at the big picture of California agriculture, if you ask me what's more valuable, Los Angeles or the Delta, there's no comparison. I'm sure that the Delta will survive. I think that it's neglected because there is not a mass of people that lose sleep over the Delta. When everything's said and done, it's something that you have to balance everything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love to tell the story of taking a colleague from the Netherlands out into the Delta, and he says, home, this is a great, wonderful place out here. It is a very rapidly transformed landscape, threatened by climate change early. And that's the story of humanity. It's the future now.